Hi everyone, welcome to TECSperts, where we here at the East Carolina talk about the upcoming football game.
Trailing East Carolina by 8. Frazier across the field. Boom! What a big hit!
This is Tori Poole, one of the football beat writers for the East Carolinian.
Taking a shot up top. Coverage on. Touchdown, Pirates!
Adam Decker, the only returner from last year besides me, who has now gone from football beat writer to football editor.
Just watch here. He's trying to cradle it. That ball never hit the ground.
This is Jaron Honeycutt, our other football beat writer. Hi, welcome to TECSperts. Today we're going to talk about ECU's game versus Virginia Tech coming up this weekend. All right, so first we're going to kind of talk about last week's loss. Guys, kind of talk about what was some of the things that ECU did that kind of made them unravel.
I think ECU played actually pretty well in the game. If you take away all the turnovers and the interceptions and the fumbles, which, they didn't deserve to win that game with, turning the ball over in the red zone that many times.
3 times in the red zone.
Yeah, but the offense had 500 plus yards. What did they have? 200 more yards in South Carolina. The defense, they were put in a tough spot in the first quarter and they only let up a field goal late in the game. Like, the defense played pretty well, but it's just, you can't turn the ball over that many times, especially in the red zone, and expect to win. So I think that they looked solid. It was just extremely sloppy and unfortunate, like when you got close to the goal line.
It was tough to watch because you're used to seeing ECU offense that just churns out a lot of points and everything, and the defense, that usually withstands the other team's offense. But this time, our ECU's offense was very on, but they couldn't, turn any points out of it. And the defense, for once, looked like it was a strong point of the whole team. So it was tough to see that loss, but at the same time, you had something to be positive about.
Yeah, that was like the craziest thing to watch was like you kept seeing ECU have all these all these turnovers in the red zone, and then the defense had to take the field again. But they had like 3 and outs, like straight up, like just right after that, and they weren't letting it get to them. They were just going out there doing their job. So it made it really tough to watch the offense have all those turnovers in the red zone, and then the defense come out and play as good as they did, and then still, have that happen to them.
All right, I think one thing we definitely have to mention about the ECU's offensive performance is the play of Zay Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Zay Jones always gets a lot of headlines and everything, but talk about how great that game is, how much of a signature that is.
It was almost to the point where if Philip Nelson dropped back to pass, it was going to Zay Jones. It was almost as if every single time he threw the ball, it was to Isaiah Jones and he was catching it. So just a completely monstrous game. He had a similar game like that in Florida. I think he had like 11 or 12 receptions down there and a touchdown. He's the safety blanket. If the quarterback's if he's scrambling, if he's a little, shaken up a little bit, he could just look for Zay. Zay always seems to be open. He's got sure hands. He's quick. He's a big target. So he's definitely a safety blanket for Philip Nelson.
Justin Hardy was so good here, and it really puts to rest a big game that Hardy had with 17 receptions. But you look at it, and the fact of the matter that Zay had broken that in I think it was, you still had about 10 minutes left, or 10 minutes left in the fourth, and it took Justin Hardy a 3 overtime game to get 17 catches. So that, yes, he had over 30 targets, but that in itself speaks volumes of just how of a dominant receiver he can be. What was it, the week before, Chad Johnson had called him out on Twitter. Greg Jennings, yeah. He's already got a lot of eyes on him, and it seems the more eyes that are on him, the better he plays. And just an atmosphere of over 80,000 people to play like that, like it's nothing, kid's going to be great.
And let's not forget that at one point, he was tied for the NCAA record of receptions in a game with 23 receptions, but then they bumped one of those receptions down to being laterals behind the line of scrimmage. So
he also had a catch that they ruled incomplete, and they didn't challenge it. But if you go back at it and look at it, it's very skeptical.
Yeah.
It looks like a catch, but that could have been the record. Who knows, though?
All right, so we won't want to spend too much time on last week's game, but we've been kind of having some debates around the office about draft stock of Zay. We're not going to battle it out. We're just going to say, each one of y'all tell us what round y'all think he'll go in.
I think he's his second day of the draft, second or third round.
Second or third round?
I mean, it just depends because you got to think about who all was coming out this year. ECU, they've known to put out some good pro players. Linville Joseph, Dwayne Harris, Chris Johnson, Justin Hardy. But at the same time, ECU. You look at them and you got your Alabama people. SEC, ACC people that look at it. And it's like okay, like this is a mid to lower tier school. Obviously, people negate that, but I see him going probably like Adam said, maybe at highest a low second round, maybe to fifth round guy. But that doesn't put a ceiling on what his play could be like in the NFL.
I would love to see Zay Jones go that high in the draft. I think he's a great guy. I think he deserves it. But I think the NFL is going to overlook him because he's from ECU. I think they're probably he's end up going to drop him down like fifth or sixth round just because where he went to school.
The only reason I say that though is just because I was a part of the East Carolinian staff when Justin Hardy was here, and I don't remember he broke the record for most receptions in all time. I don't remember this much hype behind one person. Like Justin Hardy was a beast, but he wasn't getting shouted out by NFL players.
Also, you got to look at
Phil, but which that's could be part of his job too, is to get recognition to his players. You know what I mean? So
that's big.
Yeah, so that could help Zay as well.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to move to Virginia Tech. Last year, obviously ECU's probably biggest win of the season was against Virginia Tech. So with this 6-game winning streak against the ACC and everything that goes into it, do you think that Virginia Tech might still overlook ECU?
I actually saw I want to say it was Virginia Tech student paper, and it was a headline that said something like VT's not overlooking ECU. It was something like that, just because this would be the third straight time ECU. Is it four? This would be the fourth?
Third.
Yeah,
Third.
So this would be the third straight time. Last year was an absolute mud fest, just rain, torrential downpour. So
And of course, James Summers was the big mud.
yeah, James, that was his coming out game and everything. But I doubt they're overlooking ECU. I would hope not. I just think that's from an intelligence standpoint you wouldn't. But we'll see Saturday.
It's the ACC game of the week. And there's factors for I'm sure a lot of Virginia Tech fans will give you a lot of factors like why they lost last time, like the Mud Bowl, and then the last time before that it was we just come off of beating Ohio State, big head and looking over ECU again. But at the end of the day, this is the players on both teams need to understand this is a new year and it has nothing to do with it. There's a new coach on both sidelines, new head coach. So I think two new head coaches, neither side, especially ECU, but Virginia Tech, I don't think they're overlooking. Especially a coach who's been in the conference with ECU and knows how they who knows how they are and the tradition that comes behind ECU's football history or with it.
Right. And Tori, you handled the preview this week for this paper. So when it comes to Virginia Tech, what do you think that they do well that can really hurt ECU?
Their run game is strong. We've seen ECU definitely struggle with that. You saw it against South Carolina. That was one of their biggest problems. At the end of the game against South Carolina, they had 3 straight stops, and 4th and 1 came up, and they had the 25-yard run to basically end the game. They were able to take a knee basically the rest of the time and run out the time. But I think that ECU is working on it, but I still think that's going to be a big problem for them. They have some pretty decent running backs on their team that have put up 100-plus running yards every game. But I also think they have a pretty solid quarterback. This is the first week that ECU will be facing a team that isn't trying to go back and forth between 2 quarterbacks to figure out who's their starter for the year. They know who he is. He was at a community college, transferred in, and he's solid. He knows what he's doing. He has faith in his receivers and tight ends and has a lot of weapons on offense to use. And I think that is going to be a big problem for ECU, and we'll have to see how the defense stands up to it.
I think the thing that sets Virginia Tech apart from other schools ECU will face is their defense, because Bud Foster's been a defensive coordinator there for a long time, and it's a second-ranked defense nationally right now. They haven't allowed a 100-yard passer yet, and they played Tennessee, who's ranked 14th. They played Boston College, which Boston College is a low-tier ACC school, but still ACC school. You don't allow a 100-yard passer. Josh Dobbs, who's an SEC quarterback, pretty well known, pretty famous guy. He passed for 91 yards in that game. So the Virginia Tech defense, the defensive front puts pressure on the quarterback, and then the secondary is extremely strong as well. So that's the thing that jumps out to me the most. I know ECU has a passing attack that 500 yards against South Carolina last week, or total offense. But I'm very curious to see how this air raid ECU has, or all of these throws ECU has, is going to hold up against Virginia Tech.
I've noticed where Virginia Tech's really thin. Their depth behind their starters on defense, there's very little of it. But what they have, besides non-existent linebackers, it seems like, because what's really killed Virginia Tech is a scrambling quarterback like Dobbs. But what they really have is an absolutely explosive front, and their defensive backs can lock down. So that's it. Really, each week it seems like I've said this is going to be the best defensive line that ECU's faced this season. Well, each week it's been true, but this defensive line that Virginia Tech brings is not only big, and they're not only physical, they'll be the quickest and most explosive defensive line that ECU's offensive line is going against all season. So,
and you got to think some of that lack of depth has to do with the first-year quarterback. You don't get a full recruiting class under your belt, so can't really blame them for that.
All right, so now we're going to go to predictions, and we're going to start off with Aaron down there.
So I'm going Virginia Tech 24-13. Simply put, I think Virginia Tech's defense is just going to be too much. I think, ECU's had success in the past against Virginia Tech, but I think Virginia Tech's done overlooking ECU. I think they're going to come guns blazing at Philip Nelson, and I think it's going to rattle Philip Nelson a little bit. Probably a couple turnovers for ECU as well, and I just see Virginia Tech getting it done.
Jared?
Well, I'm being pulled two ways right now. The only reason that I'm being pulled towards ECU is because I put it in the paper, and I put 35-24 ECU. But I've watched tape on Virginia Tech, and if ECU comes out like they did last week, it's not going to be like South Carolina. They won't. Virginia Tech's too explosive. I mean, they have NFL studs all around on offense. Their quarterback's good. When ECU played a running quarterback last time against Western Carolina, that didn't have any athletes on the perimeter, they did not do too well against them. And so I really do think that Virginia Tech's going to end up taking this one 41-21. So.
All right, Tori, what's your prediction?
Well, you've changed it.
I did change it.
Okay, so as much as they think that Virginia Tech's not going to overlook ECU, I think they will. I mean, I think the coaches have been pounding it into them not to, but I think that the players are going to overlook them. They've played some pretty big teams and played well against them. But I'm going to go 41-24 ECU. I think that Philip Nelson and the offense have learned their lesson. I think that they really want to come back and prove themselves to show that they weren't just, it wasn't just a fluke against NC State, and that they're actually a big offense and they can prove themselves. So I think it'll be an interesting game, and we'll see what happens.
All right, that's TECSperts. You can join us again next week. Thank you for watching.